moving to the session at hand, insights and the impact of classroom action research. So for this session, our panelists will give you further insight into their personal journeys as educators who, took part into classroom action research projects, and they will share their experiences of exploring their data and putting their plans into action. So they will show you how they actually did some, follow-up data collection and what happened next. So by the end of the session, you should have a clear idea of the different phases of action research and the studies that are presented in their new publication. So I'll be sharing the link to the publication in the chat. So feel free to download it. It's available on the Teaching Africa website. So let's I think Isa is ready. Everybody's ready. Hamed, can we kick off? Hi Hamed, can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I'm back.
Thanks. Awesome. Thank you very much. So let's move on to the plans, putting plans into action. Hamed is going to talk about his action plan and the outcome of his research. Go ahead, Hamed.
Yeah, okay. My research title was aspect of gender differences in the textbook used by Year 9 learners. So the participants of this project were students, some teachers, and I, the researcher, and the resource person. So the resource persons that came during this research was one of my friends then that we graduated together. So I reached out to him. He's a nurse. So I reached out to him to come to participate in the what's it called, in the research, and do a kind of intervention program with my students then. Then I also engaged some teachers to stand in for other professions like lawyer and everything. So I didn't get a lawyer, but I got somebody who came to talk about the job, what the job is all about, and why everyone can become part of this profession. So the intervention, I started by planning, trying to know what will be needed during the research. So I sent messages to everyone. I sent messages to the resource persons. Then I shared consent forms to my learners to take them home for their parents to sign that they are interested or they would want to join the research. Then after getting the responses from the parents and also working with the school, then I submitted my action plans, which lasted for 4 weeks. These 4 weeks, it's not as if I engaged them for the whole of the 4 weeks. So it was just during my lessons, part of my lessons, like, okay, maybe once in a week. Yeah. So the next week, we have another meeting, not the whole of the week, the whole of the first, second, third week, just a particular period of time during their lessons. So this shouldn't disrupt their normal classroom teaching and learning. So the first thing we did was designing gender-neutral instructional materials. If you remember that I showed you some aspect of gender differences in the textbook, which I used. So as a teacher, I shouldn't see the textbook as being too bad for me not to use anymore. The only thing I need to do is to is to add what is missing. So you improvise in that sense. So I printed some instructional materials to make up the gaps in the textbook. So, for example, we had police officers, we have the male and the female police officers. Then we had if you can zoom the picture, you see some of these images. We had the nurse, the male nurse, who is the person who came to have what's it called? To have the intervention with the student. So this person, Nurse Abdulaziz, he gave them clues on why all the males can also become a nurse or can become nurses, and they fell in love with him. That, oh wow, so there can be a male nurse. So it was really surprising. Then we also had a teacher who came in to talk about law. Why can a female, or why can everyone be a lawyer? Then we cited some examples of male lawyers and female lawyers in our society during the intervention. Okay, can we go to the plan, please? Yeah. So secondly, I engaged the students in gender balance activities. So on the board, there are some list of activities that I listed on their board. Then I asked them that, okay, fetching water, who is responsible to fetch water at home? So initially, when we started, most of them say female should fetch water at home. But after the intervention and everything, they said anybody can actually do the fetching of water. Then we also look at some roles in the classroom. We mentioned some roles in the classroom. Okay, cleaning the board. Whose duty or whose responsibility is to rub off the board in the classroom? So they mentioned that, oh, anybody can actually rub off the board. It's not the duty of the male students. Then we also engage them in sport activities like riding of bicycles, racing, which can actually be done by anybody and it shouldn't be gender biased. Then in the third week, we invited the resource persons who came to give, okay, then the final week, we had our revision, we had exhibitions, and then I interviewed the students to know if my interventions have actually influenced their initial thinking about gender biased activities. So, and the responses I got from them were some of the outcomes that I've listed here. So first and foremost, where they said taking roles, sport and career choices without bias. Yeah, so they understand that they can take domestic roles, they can engage in sporting activities, they can choose any of these career choices, any of these career paths without being biased. Secondly, they all understood from the intervention with Nurse Abdulaziz that nursing is a profession for both males and females. So, and then there is also an increased motivation of all the students in outdoor sports. So male students tend to engage more in what's it called? Indoor sports like skipping, singing, clapping, and all. But now, during the intervention, we were able to sensitize the students to also participate in outdoor sporting like racing, riding of bicycles, and the rest. Then I also got some interesting feedbacks from the students, but because of time, I wouldn't want to mention some of this feedback, but I'm sure in the materials given, in the what's it called, the publication. Some of these comments are there for us to go through. So these are the little things these are the plans that I engaged my students with during the intervention, during the research, and the outcome was very, very insightful. Thank you.
Thanks, Ahmed. Thanks for sharing, especially the outcomes. Is very interesting, especially looking at teachers, career paths. I think it's eye opening to see, how much change was able, you were actually able to bring about, following your research project. But without further ado, we'll move on to Dorcas, who will also be sharing, her plans and how, what actions she actually she made.
Okay.
Yep.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Dorcas. Can hear you very well.
Good day, everyone. Once again, welcome back. Okay. The other time I presented, someone asked a question that I didn't give my findings. I think if that person is still around, should listen to this presentation. Well, in the first place, after deciding the topic and after considering my factors, I decided to come up with some questions for my students and my classmates. One of the questions was that, what do I think about the difference in speaking ability among female and male learners? That is, myself as a teacher, what do I think about that topic? The next one is, what do my colleagues think are the causes of deficiency in speaking among female and male learners? The next one is, how do boys and girls participate in speaking activities? And the last is, what strategies, that is for my colleagues, what strategies or activities do you do in the class in relation to speaking ability among boys and girls? In order to find this, the answers to these questions, I was able to use the following method: the reflective journal. This has to do with my own aspect of observing the students in the classroom during the activities. And then we have classroom observation. I told you earlier that I had to invite my colleagues who are also teachers, educators, to come over to the class during the activities in order for them to help me observe and then come up with some observation that will help my research. And then after that, I drafted an interview for my colleagues and my students. I was trying to ask my colleagues to tell me what they observed from the classroom and then what strategies they were using in teaching activities, in teaching speaking activities in the classroom. For the students, I had to ask them, because most of them, as a result of the finding, most of them could not speak well. In fact, one of my colleagues can testify that there was earlier on, we thought the boys could speak better than the girls, but at the end of the day, we discovered it was the girls that could speak better than the boys. Meanwhile, one of the boys came and stood. He was well dressed, and we thought he was going to give us a wonderful presentation, only for the boy to stand and begin to laugh in front of the class. He couldn't say anything from beginning to the end. We had to ask him to go and sit down, and then call another person. So at the end of the day, we later discovered that the girls can speak better than the boys. These are the reasons why, according to our research, the gathering of our data, these were the reasons why the girls could speak better than the boys, according to myself and my colleagues. One of it is that the girls tend to speak better than the boys because the boys are distracted and lack confidence for the fear of being laughed at. The other one is poor background or environmental influence leads to deficiency in the speaking ability of the boys than the girls. The next is that the boys find pronunciation and grammar as the most problematic areas. And then lastly, my students, especially the boys, like conversations in pairs, debates, and role play during the class activities. Meanwhile, we have a combination in the department that that is theater, English theater. Any other lecturer from my department can bear me witness that these students, they prefer going to dance and act and do any other thing. But when you ask them to come for classes for English language, they find it difficult to come. And you discover that they care less about the English language classes, but they like dancing, they like singing, and so on like that. So I decided to come up with some action plans since I discovered that these were the areas they like participating most. One of it was a class discussion. A class discussion, I had to prepare their minds. I had to tell them that, look, we're going to have some activities, but I want everyone to respect everyone's opinion. Do not laugh at any other person. Do not distract anybody. So let's be focused, and then all of us agreed on that. That was the class discussion. The next one was I involved them in audio materials for pronunciations and pair conversations. There was this material for STEP in British Council audio. So I played one that has to do with two pairs having a conversation, and then I told them to listen to some of the pronunciations and the words, after which I asked them in pair to come out to speak to each other, as in two. You speak to each other, one of them inviting the other to a party, the other one accepting or rejecting, because that was what we listened to from the audio. So at the end of the day, they found the activity very interesting, and they were able to speak. And then after that, we now practice most of the pronunciations we heard from the audio material. The next one was a debate. I involved them in a debate between the boys and the girls, and the topic was that girls could speak better than the boys. Honestly, that topic made the boys to speak better this time around, because they felt it was a lie. When I told them that after the first one, we observed the girls speak better than them. But this time around, when I told them that speak on the topic that girls speak better than boys in the classroom, come and see the way even the one that could not speak the other time, this time around was able to stand in order to challenge, to prove us wrong, that they could speak better than the girls. So you see, I had to prepare their minds, and when it was time for this, all of them were able to speak, and we were able to learn some of the pronunciations. And then I did that for 3 weeks. Then the 4th week, we handled the issue of evaluation, revision, and the rest of it. So I evaluated them using focus group and a questionnaire. At the end of the day, I discovered that they were able to learn how to pronounce some new words. They were more bold and confident to speak better, especially the boys now. They didn't want to be left behind. So everybody participated well, but I need more time. I think they need more lessons on vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dorcas. Yes, it's nice to see, the way you've sort of involved, learners, meeting them, in activity that actually are of actual interest to them, and organizing, your action plan, around that. That's really impressive. Well done to you. And again, if you want to learn more about Dorcas project, you can find all the details of the project into the publication. So we invite you all to access it as soon as you can. But without further ado, let's just move on to Ibrahim, who will talk a little bit more about how we collected further data, and now what the impact was around his actual project work. Over to you, Ibrahim.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to speak again. The title of my research is Choice of Learning Resources and its Influence on Inclusive Gender Education. that is the topic I considered in this research. But I want our audience to understand that in exploratory classroom research, we've been talking about collecting data. You actually collect data in two phases. The previous data that have been talked about are data that you collect for exploration. So after the exploration, you have an action plan. So you want to actually evaluate the action plan using another instrument again. So at that stage, that is where I also make use of focus group interview, then questionnaire, in order to collect further data to be able to make a post data analysis. That is, let me just take you a little bit out of this place for those of us that are not too conversant with the method. What is happening here is like in a normal research where you have maybe experimental methods, you have the control group, you have the experimental group. But in the case of exploratory classroom research, what you have is the same group that answered the first research questions. And then when you come to the evaluation, you also evaluate with the same group. So you don't change the group. So at this point, these are the methods I use. So on the focus group, I had 8 students. So I administer questionnaire to also 10 students. So this questionnaire had impact on the students. And one of the impact it has is that the students now have a better understanding of what the role of women are in the society. Then the second impact it also has is female and then male can also excel in different professions, because initially, before the evaluation, most of the respondents to my exploratory instrument seems to have gender stereotype in their choice of either profession, where certain professions are designated for male and others for female. Then thirdly, the student ideas about career choice had changed, just like others have spoken about how this profession are already stereotyped, that nursing for men, police for nursing for women, police, and other high-risky job for men. But at the end of this evaluation, using the focus group and questionnaire, so this the impact that the instrument had on the student is that career choice, the idea they have about career choice has changed, that being a male or female, you can be engaged in any career. Then the third impact that the instrument had on the students, because we engaged extensively the use of pictures in the evaluation. So finally, the material was liked by the student. Then another idea is the student admitted that their choice of careers were influenced by the learning resources. Just like I said, we make use of pictures and then videos. So they became so interesting and then engaging in the tasks we use, most especially when it comes to the use of textbooks, the use of pictures and video, just like I have said earlier. So all these put together during the evaluation stage help to influence the students' choice of career through the learning resources I use. But ultimately, sometimes I wanted to ask earlier that as teachers, what are some of the resources we use in the class to teach our students? So we have a handful of them that we can mention, like the textbook, like the chalkboard is there, the pictures are there, the flashcards are there. But ultimately, what I want to encourage us as teachers, that first of all, you must admit the fact that you are the first resource in the class. If you don't become a resource in the class, whatever kind of resources you have, they may not be relevant to the student and even to you as a teacher. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thanks so much, Ibrahim. I think you actually laid out very well, the need to explore the choices of learning resources and, the influence it has, on inclusive gender education. But you also, I think there's what's noteworthy is that you just specify that there's actually no limitation to using data collection methods. I think that what you just explained was that you shouldn't limit it to just in the in the planning phase. It also supports you when you want to lay out your action plan for for any research project. Obviously, focus. You've actually specified that in your research you focus on focus group session and questionnaires, but that's I think it's a bit similar to Hamed's work when discuss some of the stereotypes that are currently in that need addressing in various resources that are available in learning curriculums. Thanks so much. I think we'll be moving on to Rashidat.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Rashidat.
So I'm going to continue with a little bit of information about the research that I did. Just like Ibrahim mentioned, when we have done the first exploration, asking ourselves questions, gathering data, we then, from our findings, try to create actions that can address any problems or findings that we had. So one major finding for me, which was quite a surprise because, like I said earlier, I had felt that the boys were not as fluent as the girls, was that I discovered that it wasn't really a problem of fluency. It was more a problem of confidence or fear of being made fun of and being judged. So one of the students, for example, mentioned in the questionnaire that, because I had this, how confident are you to read in front of the class as a question? And they said not very confident. And in brackets, he put, I would prefer to read behind a curtain. That was a boy, yes. And I had, a number of the boys say the same, that they don't like to read in front of the entire class. They are afraid of being made fun of. More of the boys said this than the girls. And I think that was basically what I had noticed, that I thought was a problem of fluency, was rather a problem of confidence. So I did, from this and other findings, come up with an action plan, which involved, first of all, laying down rules about respecting everyone in the classroom. The next thing I did was to, in every reading lesson, to model what fluent reading was. So I told them, I talked about speaking in public, being confident, projecting your voice, and then the fluency aspect. I said you need to read as if you are speaking. Let it come naturally, let it flow. And then I would model this reading. Another thing I did was that for each week, I would introduce a specific reading strategy to try to help with comprehension and fluency. So for example, we would talk about identifying the main idea in a text. We would talk about making inferences, making connections. Over the next 4 weeks, for each week we did this. I also introduced them to questions that they could use to check their own comprehension. So questions like, what do you think will happen next? Has anything like this ever happened to you? So I introduced these questions to them and had them use it with every reading comprehension that we had. Another thing I did was that after any reading strategy I introduced, we would have a reading comprehension where they're working in pairs, one male and one female. And this was to help them get used to each other. So that concept of maybe being shy would not really be there. And finally, I also tried to make sure that each child had a book to take home every week to increase the frequency of reading and hopefully improve their reading fluency. And at the end of the 4 weeks, or during the 4-week period, because the data collection happens as you're carrying out the action, I was able to use my observation reflection journal. So I watched them as they read and I took down notes. I went back home to also reflect on some of the classes. I took down notes in my journal. And towards the end of the 4-week period, I then had a focus group with the learners. I had 18 learners in my class. So I had them in groups of 8 as the focus group size. So I had 2 groups, and I asked them, you know, different questions about the differences they felt. How comfortable are you reading in front of the entire class now? Things like that. Are you okay working with the boys? Because when I first started, really, it was as if the boy next to them had a plague, or the girl next to them had a plague. They complained all the time. But by the second week, they had gotten used to the fact that, okay, their partner is going to be a female, and there are rules that they need to abide by. So at the end of the period, some of the impacts that I noticed was that 100% of them affirmed that they felt that their fluency and comprehension had improved. That was from the learners gotten through the focus group discussion. I also found out that at least 90% of them who were initially very uncomfortable working with a different gender, we now had everybody in the class okay with working with a different gender. Not all of them were comfortable. Some of them still said they preferred working with the same gender, but now it wasn't such a big deal to them. I also noticed that regular practicing of the reading strategies included improved engagement in the classroom. So asking each other questions like, what do you think will happen next? You know, have you had any connection with this text? These were things they were doing in pairs, and it improved their engagement in whole class sessions and in their pairs also. And then the guiding questions improved their comprehension, as evidenced by my journal in my reflections. So what were the next steps? As we have mentioned, classroom action research is iterative. It's a cycle. You can't just say, okay, these are my findings, these are the impact, and that is the end. What else can you do? So I did notice that I had some gaps that I am hoping that I will address, you know, this session, for example. I'm going to continue all the steps in the action plan, but I may need to, you know, monitor the pairs more closely. A number of the boys complained that the girls were bossy, you know, during the session. So I may need to intervene and ask, okay, has he had a chance to talk, or allow him to speak, or the other way around. But in my class, it was the girls that were found to be bossy. The girls complained that some of the boys get easily distracted. That was their complaint, you know. So I also decided that I would allow the learners create or co-create with me the questions that they would ask themselves, because I realized that when I'm in class and when I have the questions I've given them, they use that. But when they're reading on their own, maybe at home, I was expecting that it would become a part of them, like automatic, that they start to ask themselves those questions, but they didn't really do that according to what I got from the focus group. So I'm hoping if we're co-creating questions together, then they know that these are questions that they can also use outside the classroom. As a researcher, I have grown a lot. I think this would be a good place to really appreciate the British Council for putting this together. Our mentors and our guide, Paula, they were really, really very supportive. And it made a big impact on me that I was able to really understand better what was happening in my class. I had a different perspective. And then I saw the reality because of the data. It wasn't someone else coming to suggest to me that, oh, why don't you look at it this way? This was something I saw myself. I was also able to clear misconceptions, and I became more open-minded. I was reading through the chats of the last session, and somebody said something about, you know, classroom management, you need to monitor the boys more. I was like, okay, because of the way I'm now taught on gender, I was like, that's biased. How do you know you don't need to monitor the girls more? So it depends on your class, your situation. In some classes, you find the girls are the ones that are talkative and bickering. In some classes, you find that the boys are the ones that are, you know, rambunctious. So we can't generalize. I've learned that, and I've become more open-minded in all situations. I've also learned the value of data and keeping records. So the journals I had to keep, it's not easy, you know, as a teacher, it's something you're not used to, but it's something that helps. It makes you more reflective. You are thinking of what is happening as it's happening, and then you go back home and you're still reflecting on what has happened in your classroom, what you can do better. So it's helped me with that aspect of teaching that wasn't really emphasized earlier, how to improve your instruction using data. That is a great thing that I've learned as a teacher. Another thing is that sense of empowerment to face challenges. I don't have to wait for anybody. Yes, I can talk to my superiors. I can ask my colleagues for their opinions. I can look for mentors, but now I have somewhere to begin from. you know, I can say, okay, this is the idea I have. This is what I want to ask. So I have a starting point, which I can then take to those mentors and ask them if it's on the right path, or finish my action and ask them what I can do. You know, I have that power now to call my colleagues and tell them I want to have a focus group discussion. I don't feel shy. I don't feel less than. I know that it's something empowering for me. And I know that it's something specific to me and my classroom. So we can read a lot of data. We read a lot of articles, attend courses, but many of these courses, maybe they're from the US, they're from the UK, they're from Europe. They're not localized to the experiences we're having in our own classrooms. So exploratory action research just brings everything home and allows you to do what you need to do to help your own learners. Another beautiful aspect of this research for me was the increased rapport with my learners. So when I started, I explained to them that I'm doing a research. This is what I want to find out. And then, of course, we also had the consent forms that they sent home. You know, all of this, I had started talking to them about the research before I sent the consent form home. So they were already eager. They were willing to share. I mean, like I said, one of them put in brackets something I didn't ask in the questionnaire. They were so willing to share. They were so happy that I wanted to listen and know their own opinions. I had an open-ended question that said, how can I improve your reading? And they gave me so many different suggestions outside of what I ever thought of, that not even really related to fluency. But this gave us a bond in the classroom. And same when we were having the focus group discussion, they were really chatty. At a point, I had to, you know, mellow them down because they all wanted to talk. They all wanted to air their views. Some of them were even, you know, starting to bicker. No, it's the boys that do this, it's the girls that do this. But they loved that aspect of that togetherness, that ability to share their views. And they kept asking me, so what did you find out? So are we going to be on British Council? So they're asking different questions when they saw the questionnaire. Are you going to Britain? All sorts of things that just made the class, you know, more fun and interactive. And I think the last important point I've learned from this research is the importance of community. I've had so much fun with the 7 researchers and our mentor, and not only them, we were able to interact with those also researchers from Senegal, from Sudan, from Ethiopia. Interestingly, after we had started this research, Musa, Ngom, and I met physically, and it was so exciting. Like, we had to send a picture back to the group. Guess who I saw at the Africa ELTA conference, you know? So it's all about community within the English language teaching community, and even within the school. So I involved parents, not directly, but the fact that they had to sign up my consent form made them know that, okay, something was going on. Some of them were asking their children. Some of them had to call me for, you know, more clarity on what was happening. I involved my school leaders, telling them this is what I want to do. I had to take permission in some cases to attend the trainings, not really for my research, but, you know, it just brought about more togetherness as a whole. And I think it's just something that is a good thing that all teachers should see how they can key into. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rashida. I think, especially, you know, looking at your actually focus, I think reading is usually, you know, overlooked. There's a tendency that, you know, teachers will focus more on speaking, grammar, but yes, it's actually important. It's actually interesting that you focus your project on reading and you know, how we can actually improve you know, reading proficiency for your learners. But the, you know, the most interesting part is, you know, I think this is, you know, an invitation for all participants today to know that there are so many takeaways. It's so impactful to engage in action research, not just for your classroom, not just for your you know, for your learners, but also for yourself as a teacher. And Rashida has, you know, very nicely shared various you know, takeaways for her, going from, you know, her being now part of a wider community of teachers, but also you know, empowering, you know, kind of empowering you know, herself to face more challenges. So thanks very much, Rashidat. I would definitely be inviting more teachers to read you know, in detail your project research. But we'll be now moving on to the, you know, the Q&A bit. just a bit more interesting. Let's see how much conversation we'll be getting from our audience. I understand we have teachers in Nigeria at the moment in a room, so we would love to hear from the audience. It's been quite a journey, so we discussed action research in detail, the data collection method, but also the impact that it can have in for your learners and yourself. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to address them now for the next 45 minutes. And we'll then move obviously to Senegal, because we also have a whole. I'm in Senegal currently, so during the lunch break, some teachers approached me complaining that their questions were not answered. So I told them we have plenty of time. We have plenty of time during the third session to address those. So can we begin with Nigeria, Team Nigeria? Any questions from the audience? Again, we have some questions in the Q&A as well, which I will be moving on to. But I would just wanted to give the audience the opportunity to speak, so we can answer their questions live. Now, if there are no questions for now, I think we can move to Senegal. Michelle, if you can hear me, feel free to give the microphone to your group of teachers.
Okay. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Clear.
Okay, I'll leave the floor to our teachers. I think you want to start? Okay, hold on. That will start.
All right, awesome. Have they put the questions in the Q&A, or they would like to ask the questions live?
Hello? Can you hear?
It's very faint. I think if you can come closer to Michelle. Yes, Michelle, I can hear you very well.
Okay. Yeah, it's not a question, but more like a contribution.
Sure. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Sira Diop, English teacher in Senegal.
Thanks, Sira.
I'm very glad to be here with you, and I learn a lot. Thank you very much for the presenters. I just give you one contribution about the girls' gender, the girls' ability to become at school, because I have this problem with gender. I was postponed for the first time in Fatick, a rural area in Senegal, and their students were not able to accept me as a teacher, as a female teacher in the area, because there were not female teacher at that moment. It was in 2006, I think. And they trying, and they talked to all the village that a girl mustn't be their teacher. So that it was a big problem, but someone managed it and let them know that a girl must be their teacher, because this girl go to school and is trained to come here and to give you knowledge. That's why I was talking to Musa Ngom, who was doing the presentation for the gender differences, because in the rural area, the girls can't speak because in their culture, the girls are left in the second hand. They are behind men. And this is a stereotype they developed until they become adults. That's why they can't speak in public, and they say girls have not the right to talk, girls have not the right to, I don't know, take some, I don't know how to say it. Okay, for example,
responsibility.
that's why, and these stereotypes, they develop it, and until the school, they make jump. That's what arrived me in the rural area, and that's what I want you to share with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Sira. Thanks so much for your contribution. Can we, Michelle, do you have anyone, any question?
From Senegal.
Sure,
Hi.
please go ahead.
My name
Hi.
is Martin Young from Senegal, and this question was for my colleague, my English teacher colleague, Olatunde. Olatunde, you mentioned that you were able to achieve a 80% test score in your classroom, and I wanted to know how you managed to do it equally. Were both girls and boys able to get the same score, and how did you manage to do that? Thank you.
Thanks, Mati, for your question. Olatunde, are you like to answer?
Steve, can you
Yes.
hold on? We have a last question before we want to move on.
Last question.
Okay.
All right, sure. Yes, please go.
I would like to give a contribution as far as the problem concerning girls being more reluctant to the problem of participation in the classroom. I think it is a matter of area, in rural areas, because of culture, girls do not participate a lot. And boys are more dynamic than girls in rural areas, boys. But in cities, the girls are participating more than boys. It's a question of area and culture. But to solve this problem, we have to let the students know that only practice makes perfect. If we're learning a language, we have to practice that language. Otherwise, we lose it. So we have to speak, listen, read, and write in that language so that we can talk about mastery of that language. So all the 4 skills should be taken into account. We have just to let them know, to bear in mind that only practice makes perfect, apart from those religious or cultural considerations. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your contribution. I think we'll have now, we'll leave Olatunde the chance to answer the questions from Mati about being able to have an equal score of 80%. Whether it was both on both sides of girls and boys. Yeah, Olatunde, could you please clarify?
Okay. I've been laughing since. Actually, that was just a hypothetical. What is it called? I was saying that the point when I said I was to tell us that when we want to research or we want to observe something in our classes, it doesn't have to be problems. That even if it is something that is good, we can try to find out what we have done to achieve that great thing, that success, so that we can then consistently repeat the process. So basically, there was no class where all the students got 80%. That was just, I was just giving an example of a situation where even if it is something positive, it can still be, a source of idea for us to, try to work on and research further on. So no such context.
Thanks for clarifying. Thanks for clarifying, Olatunde. If there, yes, to that, would like to add something?
Not to that. I saw 2 questions here that I'm interested in answering, if you don't mind.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
First one, talking about statistical tools. It says, I haven't heard of any statistical tool used for analysis of data. So the beautiful part of personal action research is that it's not too technical, although we do need to analyze our data. So for example, I'm going to use my own example, and we may have other people that use different tools to analyze their data. What I did was something as simple as putting all my data into an Excel sheet. So for example, if I have an observation, I'm observing the children, and out of 18 of them, 6 of them do this, and 8 of them do this, and the other 2 do this. I can take that percentage. I can say 2 over 18 times 100 to get my percentage of the number of children that do something. However, because my class numbers were small, I couldn't use percentages for all the findings, except for those that were really absolute. But where but I could say half of them did this and half of them did that. And for some of the other data too, like something as simple as those of them that chose comfortable, not comfortable, shy, scared. I just tabulated half of them tally. At the end of the day, I can. Okay, thank you. So just with a simple tally system, I was able to get the numbers of learners that fell under a particular category. So depending on your numbers, if you have really large numbers, you may need to look for applications and tools that you can use. But with some of our classes, I think maybe Olatunde had the largest with about 100. It might not need anything more high-tech than an Excel sheet. So that is one that we can use. Another question I wanted to talk to here was, I think it's Lawrence that is saying that ladies have more eloquent, I don't know, attractive voices that make it difficult to spot errors. That's an observation which I think you need to do some more research on. But I think from my own perspective, no matter how attractive your voice is, if you're making a grammatical blunder, it's even going to be more apparent, So it doesn't have anything to do with the quality or the attractiveness of the voice. Blunders are easy to spot, So I don't think that has much to do with it. There is some research that says that ladies have higher language development skills, but all that it can be relative, and these things are really situation and context specific. Thank you.
Thanks, Rashidat. Thanks very much. Now, for our audience, you can feel free to raise your hand so we can give you the floor. You can ask a question. But I would like to just there's this question from Maureen, and the question is: I'm a teacher in a remote area in Kenya where learning English needs a lot of skills and patience with learners. Is asking what are the strategies I can put in place to help my learner. So that means, obviously, is there room for an action research project in his situation to sort of tackle the need to sort of develop more skills and patience to help his learners? Yes, someone raised their hand from Team Nigeria. Anybody would like to answer that question?
Steve, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. All right, so we have some questions here. I don't know if you want an answer to the question that was asked or you want some more questions. We have about 4 to 5 questions here to be asked.
Oh, okay. I was actually, so you actually corrected the questions on your end. That's actually nice. I'm just wondering, can we answer that question first, and then we'll give you the floor so we can answer the other 4 questions that have been collected from your end.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody from the team like to answer that question? Let me say it again. I'm a teacher in a remote area in Kenya where learning English needs a lot of skills and patience with learners. What other strategies can I put in place to help my learners? I think it's a bit more general, but then if you can put it in context, focusing on action research.
Well, I may not be talking specifically about action research. Now, the teacher realized that there are basically 4 language skills that the learners must be exposed to for them to be good users of English language. Talking about listening, speaking, reading, and writing skill. No matter what the level of the learners are, they should be able to improve their performance in as much as the teacher is ready to expose them to the integrity of teaching and learning. Now, when it comes to action research in such a context, the teacher needs to identify the reasons why the learners were not developing, why they were interested in learning the use of the language. And so the teacher has to have some research questions. For example, why do the learners find it difficult to speak English properly? Why are they not interested in reading some passages? He has to have some research questions at the back of his mind. Then, having gotten those questions, he needs to really find out using some, what's it called? He needs to get some tools to be able to observe the situation and then propose solution such that the problem will be ameliorated. Thank you.
Thanks for offering these questions that Maureen can use as a start to maybe develop some more strategies to tackle these issues. I would just like to maybe move to Glory. Glory, would you like to share the questions that you've collected?
Yes, please.
Thank
so
you.
we have the first question here.
Good afternoon. My name is Jacqueline Amasike, Director Teacher Professional Development, FCT, Universal Basic Education Board. And I have 3 questions, but I'll just ask one first. What should be done? Because I think in the first paper that was presented, there were some issues about gender bias in learners' textbooks. And my question is, what should be done to avoid gender bias in learners' textbooks? I don't know whether I should go ahead and ask all the questions. And what can a teacher do to address gender bias in learners? And the third one is, are girls really passive in the classroom, or is it indicative of a problem? Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks very much. Thanks, Jacqueline, for your questions. So for the first question, is what should be done to address gender issues when it comes to the textbooks? Who would like to answer that first question?
Okay. As in textbooks, I think what we need to do is what we have started now, which is we need to start a conversation around that. We need to bring it to public awareness. We need to mainstream that discourse. We need to talk about it, and we need to point it out. And I think this is something that Ahmed worked on in his own research. So after this, of course, we then need to get authorities who are in positions to make policy and as well enforce them, to also make sure that they begin to give out or reel out policies that will take out those biases from the materials, the textbooks that the students are using. So I think the first step is this, that we analyze those textbooks, we point those things out, and we engage ourselves as well as get publishers to see what we are talking about, get those in authorities to make policies that will regulate and take these biases out of the materials that the students are using. And then that's that for the first question.
Okay. I would like maybe to have Ahmed contribute to that first question. I think he has raised his hand. I suspect he would like to say something about that first one. Ahmed?
Okay, thank you so much, Steve, and thank you so much, Olatunde. Yeah, from the question being asked about the how we can solve the problem of gender bias in our textbook, I was opportune to be part of Lagos State Book Review this year, where some books were given to me to review with some group of reviewers. And I discovered a lot of blunders when it comes to gender issues. And I was just laughing when I was reading some of the literature texts that were being planned to give to the students next session. So first and foremost, one of the solutions that I think is we should include publishers into these programs. So publishers should be part of inclusiveness program, because most people are not aware, they are not sensitive about these matters. So we need to include publishers, and at the same time, before any book is being recommended, it should go through some reviewing processes by inclusive teachers that that are gender inclusive. You understand? That are sensitive when it comes to issues like this, because I think it's a conventional topic. So it might be that many people are not aware of these little things. So that's from me. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ahmed. So let's address Jacqueline's next question. This is about what teachers can do to address gender biases with their learners.
Good afternoon. And I think the issue of gender bias begins from the home. We should have an understanding from the home that gender roles or roles are not supposed to be stereotyped in the home. Just like in the course of this presentation, somebody mentioned earlier, I think Ahmed also, that in the class, there are no specific gender that's assigned to